All right, welcome. Today we're going to talk about H2S and some of the cautions or precautions about working around H2S and some of the things we can do to protect ourselves. So let's go on. And first of all, what is H2S? Well, H2S is formed whenever organic matter decomposes, and the bacteria that decomposes organic matter releases hydrogen sulfide. So that's why it's naturally found in oil and gas fields and sewers and cesspools, stagnant waters, because all this organic matter is decomposing and it gives off H2S. Now, what are the concerns with that? Well, bad part about it is that H2S is lethal. It's very fatal to us. So as we breathe in small concentrations of H2S, it paralyzes our brain that tells us to breathe, and therefore our brain does not know how to breathe anymore, and we end up dying. And so when we talk about H2S, there's a few characteristics here. It's colorless, you can't see it, and it's, like I mentioned, it's very highly toxic at low dosages. We're talking about in ppm levels, and we'll get to what levels that actually can cause you to be sick, what levels can actually kill you. It is soluble in water, it's heavier than air, and that's very important, because if you do have an H2S incident or situation, do not go downhill, do not go into a pit, and if you do monitor below, because it's going to be found in low areas. It does smell like rotten eggs. It does have a rotten egg smell, but don't let that be a means of detecting H2S, because what we found is that if you're exposed to it long enough at high enough concentrations, it will deaden your olfactory senses. Therefore, you will not smell it anymore. So what's happened a lot, or what could happen, is that you smell H2S and said, oh, I smell H2S, and then a couple of minutes later, you don't smell anymore. So you naturally think, oh, maybe just a little breeze and now it's gone, but you just can't smell anymore. So you're still breathing it, and you're still exposed to the gas, and next thing you know, you could fall sick or even die from it. So, as I mentioned, it's capable of paralyzing your brain to tell you to quit breathing, and then it also is corrosive to metals. So those are some of the names I mentioned about it. Rotten egg smell, stink, damp, sour crude, things like that. It is more toxic than carbon monoxide, and almost as toxic as hydrogen cyanide. And that's the same gas they used to use to execute criminals. I mentioned it's heavier than air. The permissible limit. So what OSHA says, you are permissible to, or you do have permission to breathe this much of H2S in an 8-hour workday, and that is 10 parts per million. Very, very small. So if you have 1 million molecules inside of a room, only 10 of those or less can be hydrogen sulfide. So that's not a whole lot. So it's let's see, we want to talk about that. I think we talked about all that stuff already. Wind direction, very important. So when you go on the job site, pay close attention to the wind direction. Look for the windsock. If it is a job site that do know to have H2S or sources of H2S, they should have a windsock there, because if a situation does arise, if alarms go off and they do have an H2S situation, you need to know which way that wind's going, so you can go upwind, not downwind where you're still going to be exposed to H2S, and not downhill where the H2S is going to accumulate. You need to go upwind, and so monitor, be very cognitive of that, the direction, velocity, any kind of wind breakers, the humidity in the area. Some of the symptoms that you could experience if you're exposed to H2S: your nose, your throat, you get eye irritation. As I mentioned, you might smell rotten eggs. You have some difficulty breathing. You become tired, nauseated, sleepy. You might have some coughing. You might have some rashes or skin irritations. You become incoherent, and then ultimately you become unconscious. So some of the effects, as I mentioned, the permissible 8-hour limit is 10 ppm. It kills your olfactory senses in 3 to 5 minutes if you're exposed to a minimum of 100 ppm. So not a whole lot either. At 300 ppm, you could experience some dizziness, some nausea. And at 700 ppm, just 700 ppm, quickly is very, very fatal. So those are some of the physical properties. Sources of H2S: oil and gas field, drilling, production, stagnant water ponds, sewers. When you're gauging production vessels, storage vessels, containers containing brine water. I've seen that happen before, where they'll have a water tank that they fill with well water, just a simple water tank, sit in the tank for a month or so, and just the bacteria inside that tank from the well water accumulated H2S inside the tank. When they open up the tank, the alarms went off. So you can think, oh, it's just a water tank we fill up with well water. H2S could be decomposing in a tank and accumulated at the top headspace in that tank. So be very careful when you're opening up tanks. Closed trenches, pits, etc. When H2S causes leaks in pumps or lines by corrosive effects or embrittlement of the equipment. H2S makes your metals become very brittle, and they have a very catastrophic fracture. Not pinhole leaks, fractures. So they could, the corrosion mechanisms have very high consequences. So routes of entry, obviously you can inhale it, you can absorb it on your skin if you get it on there, you can ingest it, and you can inject it. All routes of entry for H2S, the most probable one is you can breathe it in. That's why it's very important, if you go into an H2S situation or environment you could be exposed to, you need to have the proper, and if you do have the situation, you need to evacuate as quickly as possible. If you are required to have any type of respirator protection, the only kind that's approved is forced air, SCBA. The air purifiers do not work. Do not put on an air purifier thinking you're safe. You're not safe using the air purifier respirator. You need to have the forced air, and you need to be fit tested for that particular mask you're wearing, and that has to be done annually. So some of the also precautions, ask your supervisors, it may be possible to exposure for any place in your workplace. You need to know what places have the potential of an H2S. If you do go in there, you need to have a monitor. That monitor needs to be worn on you right by the chest level. Some people wear it on their hard hats. I don't recommend that, because H2S is heavier than air. If you do go into an environment, you can have more H2S below your nose than above your nose. So you want to make sure that you detect it first at the lower level, below levels where it could accumulate. Notice the wind direction, and having a direct exposure to H2S, you must be fit tested for what? SCB, a self-contained breathing apparatus. That's the forced air. Remember that about the smell, we talked about that. Warning signs should be posted in areas that have a potential H2S. And if you work in these areas, they should have, like I said, SCBA available. You can only use it if you've been fit tested. You need to have a monitor. 10 ppm is a limit, and you need to have awareness training at the minimum. This training you're going through right now can satisfy the awareness training, but you still need to go through the fit test if you need to wear an SCBA. Rescue, we do not perform rescue. We're not first responders in there. That is left up to professionals. Our job, if you do have an H2S situation, is to evacuate as safely and as quickly as possible. Therefore, you need to know where to go in those types of situations. So I also want to look at, there's a few videos in the playlist here that you should take a look at. One of them is this called Left Undone H2S Movie, and basically what it's about here, I'll play a few parts of it here as you go through it, and it starts off here, Left Undone. Let's make sure you can see this here. So it starts off with they have a fatality, and actually back up here. And so the guy starts his day here, and he's going on a job site, and as you go through it there, they get to the job site. They have H2S. They do all of their rules and regulations right.
Alright, y'all be safe.
Basically, they become complacent, working around H2S. So the guys go there. There's one new guy in there. The rest of them are experienced guys. They do all things right. But the first go around is kind of like a Groundhog's Day there. First go around, he goes through there, and they just go through normal routine and forget about the dangers of H2S. And you kind of see it here. Look, he doesn't even have his monitor on. Where's his monitor? He forgets it in the truck right there. You can see at the top there. So, very complacent. We need to be aware of that as we go through things, as you go through this training. Don't forget what you've learned. It's very easy to become complacent. He's got his monitor on, but the other guy, one of the other leaders there, forget his. So they go in there, they talk to the field foreman, and they have their little safety meeting right there. It's very typical to see on a job site. You go to the dangers of H2S. Well, that's all good. They go there. One guy in this meeting here speaks up about, he's a new guy there, says, what about H2S? Well, he kind of gets rebuked almost by the boss here. Look, don't worry about H2S. I've been doing this for 30 years. There's no H2S problem here. Just follow us. Don't breathe it. You'll be all right. So the guy said, okay, fine, we'll do that. So they go on the job site to get things going, and lo and behold,
it's your favorite family tradition to drive to that familiar beach house with familiar faces and make the new normal.
So they go through this thing here, and all of a sudden, the job's going good. As you can see right here, H2S alarm goes off. And as I feel this thing, okay, we're getting an alarm. Well, wouldn't you know that they discredited the alarm because they worked on it yesterday? They said, well, it's a maintenance issue. They're having problems with the alarm. Do you smell anything? No, I don't smell anything. Fine, you don't smell anything. The alarm's got problems. Keep working. Never, never, never do that. Never. Always trust the alarm. Never trust the smell. So they tell them to keep working. He says, oh yeah, I got a problem with the alarm. Well, they keep working because they don't smell anything. Well, after a while, find out it wasn't a false alarm, and they all drop dead. So they run out there, they try to run to their safety, and everybody dies. And they can do this several times. They learn each time as they go through these things. Next time they run to the wrong location, they run down wind instead of upwind. They're exposed to it. They run down the valley. They're exposed to it. And so they do all these things and not learning how to spot and treat H2S with the proper respect. So take a look at that video. It's really good in there. There's another one in there in the playlist, and basically it talks about another incident that happened. I believe it's in India, but this crew was making a repair on a valve that was in a pit, and the guys went there to make the valve. As he's did some repairs to the valve, he's going up the ladder, boom, he falls dead. Well, naturally the other guys are sitting there watching the guy fall down, and what do? They go down the pit to try to help him. Well, he fell dead because the H2S accumulated in that pit, overcame him. He fell down, and the guy went to try to rescue him. Two guys, I believe, went there and tried to rescue him. They both fell dead. Never go into a situation unless you exactly know why that person fell, because the same thing that got him could potentially get you to it. I know it's natural you want to go help your friend out, but it's not going to do you any good to die as well. So anyway, take a look at those things in the playlist. Review some of the things that's in there about H2S, and please call me, let me know, reach out to me if you have any questions about uses of H2S, working around H2S, and how to operate safely around H2S. And thank you for watching.